Okay, hi, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh and a very good afternoon. Okay, so today I would like to discuss one more topic for the course, which is a modern portfolio theory. Okay, for real estate financings and investment. Okay. So we just proceed with the slide that I have shared with you in Google Classroom. Okay, what is actually a modern portfolio theory? Huh? Okay, so modern portfolio theory, or known as mean variance portfolio theory. So the word portfolio is actually represent a group of investment instruments. Okay, what we want to do with a basket or a list of investment instruments. So based on Markowitz portfolio theory, okay, which is been developed in 1950s by Markowitz. Okay, this theory assumes that the objective of wealth creations are basically towards maximizing expected returns and also minimizing risk in the future. Okay. Okay, so the investor preference and dominant portfolio. So we have two types of investor. The first one, investor that is risk averse investor. They do not want um, to occur high risk for their investment. Still, they want to invest, but they only receive or accept a minimal risk. Then these types of investor we call risk averse investor. Okay, so these are the lines, the utility ISO points, okay, steeply rising in returns over risk. Okay, so in this graph we can see here, it is risk over return. Okay, risk over return. Okay, here for these types of um, the types of investor, they are actually more towards returns rather than risk. Okay, so that is why we can see here. Okay, even though for the high returns, okay, P is the price and the quantity lah. Okay, so if the return is high, they still wanted to have a very minimal risk for it. Okay, so we call risk averse investor. Okay. And then for the risk tolerant investor or risk taker of investor, okay, so basically they can tolerate for the risk. That's why we can see here high returns, and also the graph here more towards to the right. So meaning that they can incur high risk to expect a high return. So these are two types of investor: risk taker and risk averse. Okay, then you should ask yourself whether you are risk takers or risk averse investor. Okay. Okay, so if you do not afraid to take a risk, then you actually risk taker types of investor. Okay. Okay, so both investors will agree that they prefer points to the north and west. Okay, and in the risk or return space, they both prefer point P to point Q. P to Q lah. Okay, return and risk. So in investment, return and risk is basically is too highly correlated. Basically, if you want to have more returns, there will be high risk of investment portfolio. Okay, so the independence of risk preferences, both conservative and aggressive investor would agree about this. So portfolio theory is about how to avoid investing in dominated portfolio lah. Okay, meaning that the portfolio theory say that we cannot only invest into real estates and we neglected other types of investment. No. Okay, it is about we invest to many types of investment at the same time, so that the investment that having high risk will be tolerated, or the risk is reduced by having or by investing into low risk types of investment. Okay. Okay, so portfolio theory and diversifications. Okay, portfolios are combinations of asset, as I mentioned before. It is combinations of asset. Okay, so these are like macam kata-kata pujangka lah. Please don't put all your eggs in one basket. Okay, what more than this can we say? Kan how many eggs we should put in which basket? Okay, so in other words, given your overall investable wealth, portfolio theory tells you how much you should invest in different types of asset. For example, what percentage should you put in real estate? What percentage should you put in a stock, in a bond, okay, in a fixed deposit, for example. Okay, so these are the portfolio theories about. Okay, so at the heart of portfolio theory are two basic mathematical facts lah. The first one is portfolio return is a linear functions of the asset weights. It's linear, maksudnya sama, parallel, linear functions of the asset weights. So in particular, the portfolio expected return is a weighted average of the expected returns to the individual asset. So it links with the individual asset, the average of the individual asset with two asset at least okay. Because portfolio theory does not work for one type of asset only because it is portfolio, okay. Um, so these are the equations here. The returns of the assets will be equals to the weightage average of the returns of the individual asset. Okay. For for I is a rate of return. Okay. For example, if asset A has expected rate of return is 5%, and asset B has expected rate of returns of 10%, then 50-50 portfolios pada dua jenis ni, A dengan B, so equals to 50% A plus 50% B will have expected return expected return is 7.5%. Okay. Yeah. So, number two, portfolio volatility is non-linear functions of the asset. This one about volatility, not a return. Okay. So return is according to the number of asset. Okay, the weightage average of the returns of the asset. Okay. But for the volatility, it is non-linear functions of the asset weight, such that the portfolio volatility is less than a, a weightage average of the volatilities of the individual asset, for sure, because if we have two types of asset with a different level of risk, so the average tu will be lower than the individual risk. Okay, so this is the equations, where is the risk measured by standard deviations of asset I. So for example, if asset A has a standard deviations of 5%, asset B has a standard deviations 10%, then a 50-50 portfolio will be standard deviations less than 7.5%. Okay, non-linear, less than 7.5%, because through the portfolio investment is actually reducing the rates of risk. Okay, for basically for all assets together. So okay, so this is the beauty of diversifications lah. So in other words, portfolio theory is actually encourage diversifications in investment. Okay, it is at the core of portfolio theory. It is perhaps the only place in economics where you get a free lunch. So in this case, less risk without necessarily reducing your expected. Okay, it's lower down the risk of the investment. Okay, so here is a picture of these two mathematical facts. Yang the first one is linear, weightage average of the portfolio return, and this one the volatility, okay, of the risk of the two asset. Okay, it is non-linear lah. It is non-linear, maksudnya dia tak sama. It will be less risk. Okay, through this portfolio theory. Okay. Okay, so this diversification effect is greater. Okay, so the lower is the correlations among the asset in the portfolio lah. Okay, if there is no correlations, meaning that two different assets, sukuk, bond, real estate, meaning that the correlation is low, so the diversification effect is high, meaning that if these types of portfolio investment having different types of risk, so it will be better. Okay, it can reduce the risk and increase the returns of all the investment instrument or portfolio together. Okay. Okay. So numerical examples. Okay, suppose real estate has expected return 8% and risk 10%. Suppose stocks have expected return 12% and risk 15%. Okay, we look at this table. Okay, so then a portfolio with share in real estate, share in stock will result in this risk and return combinations. Okay, depending on the correlations between the real estate and the stock returns. Okay, so C is correlations lah. Correlations 1% correlate sama je. Okay, so this one different level of correlations are 25%, 0%, and negative 50% correlations. So the higher correlation, the lower correlations. Okay, this one correlate high, ni low kan, 0% of correlations. Dia punya effects that's better lah. So returns, okay, so returns of this one expected return and expected risk. Okay, whereby 100% correlate. Okay, this one correlation 0, 25, 50 and 75% where correlation coefficient between stock and real estate. Okay. Okay, we can see here this one written and risk for 0 correlations, 12% of returns, 15% of risk. Semua sama ni. Sekejap. Okay, never mind. Nampak macam dia punya resultnya sama, but the thing is that when they are too correlated, the diversification effect is low. So meaning to say these two assets, the portfolio assets should not be correlated. Okay. And so never mind. Okay, so we can see here the diversification's effect is greater, the lower. The diversification effect is greater, the lower the correlations among the asset in the portfolio. We can see here. Okay, we can see here correlations 100% correlate. This one 25% je correlate. Okay, if is to correlated 100%, so the risk is 10%. Okay, risk 10% with 8% of expected returns. If the risk is 14%, okay, so expected return is 11. Ultimately lah. Okay, and this one is low correlation. So the effect is that this one sama. When the risk is maybe 12%, nampak ni 12, 14 kan. Kalau 14, this one here, if 12.5% risk and then the return is 11%, more return. This one 14% of risk and 11% of return. Okay, so less correlated, then the effect is better for the expected rate of return. Okay. Okay, so the key points here is given risk that matters to investor is risk in overall wealth. It is not risk of individual investment instrument. It is overall portfolio. Okay, so therefore risk that matters in investment asset is covariance with overall wealth contributions to overall wealth volatility. So not the asset's own volatility. Okay, So if investor portfolio primarily stocks and bonds, and if real estate has low correlations with stock and bonds, then real estate volatility may not matter to investor because it may not contribute much to investors' wealth volatility, meaning that the risk is reduced. Okay. Okay, so how to make decisions? Look at this example. Okay, finding the efficient frontier. So how to make decisions when we already invested a list or portfolio of investment. So we need to find the efficient frontier. Okay, what is efficient frontier? So suppose we have the following risk and return expectations. We have stocks, bonds, and real estate. Okay, so the correlations here, this one level of correlations, mean risk and return. Okay, 10% return, 6% return, 7% return. Standard deviation is a risk lah, 15%, 8%, and 10%. So investing in any of the three asset classes without diversifications allows the investor to achieve only one of three possible risk and return. Kalau let's say if we choose to invest in stock, kita dapat yang ni je. If we choose bond, dapat yang ni. But how about if we invest these three together? Okay, what says the portfolio theory? Okay, this one. So in a risk return chart like this one, wants to be able to get as many risks and returns lah. So we have risk here and return here. Bonds kat sini, real estate kat sini, and then the stock kat sini. Because a stock is high risk and high return. So that is why the point is there here. Real estate we consider is moderate investment, moderate risk and return. So 10% we get about 7% of return. Bond is low risk, okay, 8% and 6% of returns. Okay, so now what we should do? Okay, so we need to find the efficient per frontier lah. Okay, but before that, let's say we choose to invest only two, not three. Allowing pair-wise combinations increase the risk and return possibility to this. Like say we pair with a bonds and real estate. Bond and real estate here. Okay, and then real estate and the stock. The volatility is there, but it is not efficient yet because we only consider two types of the investment instrument. Okay, so how about this if we invest this the three, all three, this one so where we can get the efficient frontier. Efficient frontier is actually a line that touch all of these risk and returns graph for the three portfolios, the three investment lah. Okay, so the efficient line here, we draw the efficient lines, meaning that if we let's say if the risk is now 10% of risk, and then the touch here, so still can get 8% of return. So let's say 10% of risk, but we choose to invest only on the real estate, we can get 7% of return only. Okay, so but if we invest these three, so all the risk and return is actually made up each other, so it actually will reduce risk at the same time give a high return to the investor. Okay. Okay, what is efficient frontier? Efficient frontier is consists of all asset combinations portfolio which maximize return and minimize risk. Okay, based on the example that I give just now. So a portfolio is said to be efficient, represent one point at the efficient frontier if it has the minimum possible volatility for a given expected return and or the maximum expected return for a given level of volatility. Is maximize return and minimize the risk and reduce the volatility. Okay. Okay, so far I hope that you are clear with the portfolio theory. So in a summary, diversifications among risky asset allows greater expected returns to be obtained, okay, for any given risk exposure. Any types of risk, high risk, high risk and high return investment, and low risk, low return investment, you can meet up together and then you can actually still get a high risk. Okay, so less risk to be incurred for any given expected return target. Okay, that is called efficient frontier. So portfolio theory allows us to quantify this effect of diversifications. So to identify the optimal or best mixture of risky assets here for the investor. Okay, so that's all for today. Okay, I hope that you are clear with today's topic. In case you have any questions, any further comments, you can text me directly in our group. Okay. Okay. With that, thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and take care.